Hi, my name's Emma. Today in this video I'm going to show you how to harvest dandelion greens and roots, how to process them, to preserve them, and how to prepare them to eat. Just a quick disclaimer before we start. I want you to take everything I say with a grain of salt. You should always be 100% sure about a plant before you harvest it, and especially before you eat it. Right now it's early spring, which is a great time to start harvesting dandelions before the leaves turn too bitter to eat. At this point, the roots are good for your liver and the leaves are mild diuretics. In the winter, after the dandelions have gone through their flowering stage, this switches. The roots become mild diuretics and the leaves become good for your liver. The materials you need for harvesting are a root digger, like this, but you can also use a small shovel or a trowel. You'll also need a plastic or a cloth bag to store your dandelions in. Never store them in plastic because they'll wilt easily. It's not hard to find dandelions. Look in ecologically disturbed areas such as this one. Oh look, here's a dandelion right here. Here's a great dandelion to harvest. See how the leaves look fresh and healthy? So I'm going to use a root digger to dig this up, being careful not to sever the root so that I can get as much as possible. And wiggle it out of the soil. And there we go. Always make sure to harvest and forage respectfully. It's an easy mistake to make to get excited about abundance of plants and end up with more than you have time to process, preserve, or eat before they spoil. If some of your roots have little things hanging off of them, you can choose to remove that, but you don't have to. To scrub the dirt off of the roots, you can do whatever you need to do. I find it's good to use this vegetable scrubber like this, but another method that can be pretty effective, especially if you have a lot of roots to process, is to fill them in a bowl with water, and so to agitate the water a little bit, and then dump out the water, and just repeat this process until the water comes clean. Sometimes when you're washing foraged plants, you'll find fun things, like chewed up gum. That's invasive. The next step in the preparation process for the roots is to dry them. So to begin, you want to chop them into small, fairly uniform pieces. And you want them to be the same size, more or less, so that they dry evenly. I'm using a dehydrator to dry out these roots, but you can also use alternative drying methods like laying them out in an oven at a low setting. I'm just going to lay these out evenly. Now that the roots are all laid out on the dehydrator, I'll fire it up. I'm just going to put it on the lowest setting here, which is 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius, which is the recommended setting for herbs and spices. After an hour or two, test for the dryness of your roots by squeezing it in between your fingernails and seeing if there's any moisture. At this point, you can either chop up your dried roots coarsely or you can grind them in a food processor. Grinding them in a food processor will allow you to make a drink that resembles coffee, but I'm just going to chop them to make tea. To make the tea, bring about a quart of water to a full boil and put in as much dandelion root as you want. I'm putting in a fair bit because I like strong tea. Now let it boil here for about a minute, then reduce the heat to a simmer and cover the pot and let it simmer for about 40 minutes. Seal any unused roots in a properly labeled airtight jar in a dry, cool place, and they should keep there for about a year if they have been fully dried. At this point, your dandelion greens are ready to use in a salad, fresh if you like, but I prefer to sauté them. To do this, the first step is to soak them in a bit of salt water for about 10 minutes, and this decreases the bitterness before you sauté it. Dandelion greens can be sautéed similarly to chard and kale. How I prefer to do this is cook up a little bit of garlic in coconut oil, and this pan would include a bit of onion if I had one. So once this has been going for a little while, just add the greens. You want to strain them, but you don't have to dry them completely because the water will help them steam. I added a bit of mushroom to mine as a personal preference. You can also season it with salt, pepper, balsamic vinegar, or anything else that you might use in your typical greens. Now you can sit down and enjoy your full dandelion meal with your greens and your root tea. Cheers!
Pain that grows inside myself. Shelf me, please, I just can't.
Nope. Gonna start over. Oh shit. Oh, fuck. What? Oh, fuck.